go ahead and start recording. So if you don't want your face to be visible on this recording, it will be published live on YouTube later as well, but totally forgot to hit record. So apologies to those tuning in remotely in the future. So for Zoom, as an overview to give everyone the best possible experience, I'll just ask that you keep yourselves muted. Certainly there'll be opportunity for questions at the end where you can unmute yourself, but you can certainly have your video on if you like. It's always nice to see faces when giving talks. So there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end once Randy finishes, and you can either unmute or you can ask questions in the chat box. All right, now that we're through that, now I want to direct your attention to our wonderful speaker, Randy Cornelius. So Randy is a citizen of the Oneida Nation and works at the United Cultural Heritage Center. He earned his degree at UW Green Bay in psychology with a double minor in human development and Native American studies in 2002. He is married to his lovely wife, Kathy, for 35 years, who I got to meet for the first time. She really is wonderful, Randy. They have one son. She's funny too. And they have 5 grandchildren. They also have a little blonde, Borky dog named Jake. And Randy told me Jake used to be named Big Jake, but ended up only weighing 11 pounds. So now they just call him Jake instead. And I'm pretty sure I need a Borky because that dog looks super cute. Randy has 40 years of experience learning Oneida language and culture, and has done so from First Nations speakers. So he is fluent in the Oneida language. He has extensive knowledge on Oneida's culture and history. He holds immense traditional knowledge, including using plants for foraging and medicines. And he is an amazing storyteller, as you will all very quickly discover here. And personally, I'm truly privileged to get to know Randy over the past 2 years. And he is truly one of my favorite people. That's what I tell everyone, Randy. You're now one of my favorite people. And and it's an honor to call you my friend. He has a great sense of humor. He has a great sense of humor and is a joy to work with. So without further ado, you're not here to listen to me, you're here for Randy. So it's Nuana Bonza, my absolute pleasure to have Randy speak with you all tonight. And thank you so much for your time, Randy.
Yo. Saguli swagwek ne wage he wat wano waladu ne jungwe tatso ne dagaskiki wakatsanuni nen wagagwini kwi nen agat talakwe ne jitnahte ne sungwawi ne sungwaya dizo ne jit nyungwale hoda ne ungwe ne dagaskiki ne ka ne nioli wage ne angadit yanda ne jit nyole angali wat kwini ne tunu nioli wage ne ka Ojita hasuha nioli wage ne utiwi angarit nyanda ne jinyole ne ngali wat kwini ne tinu nioli wage ta tonio tuhak ne nyuat niko daona ne dogaskwi ne angali wat te ne jitnate wagilo ne hoda ne tinu ne daga kwini kwi ne skat nikula ne jinyuchi ne niwat niko dahage ta tonio tuhak ne niwat niko. So just wanted to extend my greetings out. Hello to all of you, each and every one of us, and also extend my greetings, my thankfulness and love. My name is Tehahukotha in the Oneida language, and that means that there's 2 paths that I'm going down through, and I'm from the and so I'm from the Bear Clan. It's one of the 3 clans of the Oneida Nation. We have the wolf, turtle, and bear, and within each one of those families, there's 3 distinct families within each one of those 3 clans. So there were 9 distinct families that comprise the Oneida Nation. And we're originally from New York, east of Syracuse is our homelands. And that's where our name is derived from, is the description of our homelands. There's a lot of big boulders that are standing up out of the ground over in our territory over there. And from living there for thousands of years, that's what we became known as, the people, the standing stone. And I also wanted to say that I'm happy to be here this evening to talk about our ways, some of our traditional teachings that I've been learning for quite some time here. And whenever we talk about our ways, what we like to do is to talk about, the creation story, because that's where everything begins. That's where our whole cosmology is built on, or comes from. And in there, they talk about a sky world, and we don't really have the time to go in depth with that. I did it one time. It took me 8 hours. And so you're going to get the Reader's Digest version. And I'm gonna have to skip a lot, because there's a whole lot that goes on up in the sky world, in terms of customs, in terms of traditions, in terms of ceremonies, and our beliefs and values and our attitudes and all that, that go on up in the sky world. And over time, all those things came to our people here when we were created. And so there's a woman that came from that world, that fell from that world and came here. And at the time, she was pregnant and she gave birth to a daughter. And when she became a young woman, the spirit of the West, they say, is the one that impregnated her. And she's the one that had the twin boys. And the twin boys are the ones that created this world here. And so when she came here, there was nothing but water. And so this is where the turtle comes in. And that's where they placed her on the back of that turtle. And she brought earth from that sky world. And it was the muskrat who dove deep into the water at that time and brought up some mud from deep within the ocean and put that on that turtle's back. And she mixed it together with the earth that she brought from the sky world, and it began to grow. And there's songs, they say, that she sang, ceremonial songs. And these songs go back to about it has to do with the acknowledgement of the natural world. And they're songs as a way that the women sing as a way of giving thanks. And just like how the birds do that to this day, every morning at sunrise they give their song, and it's their way of giving thanks for that day. And throughout the day they'll sing that song again as a way of giving thanks. And at the end of that day they'll sing that song again. And so the women were given songs like that as well as the men. And inside of the story, there comes a time of when the daughter gave birth to those twins, and when they became young men, they came to realize what their purpose in life was. So the one we call the right-handed twin, Sunggoyat Dizo, is what we say in our language. And what that means is that he's the one who created all of us. And all of us is everything in creation that he created, not just the human beings. It's all the plant world, it's all the animal world, the water world, and life that lives within it, as well as the birds. And there were these agreements that were made with the greater forces that are around us as well. The winds, the thunders, the moon, the sun, the stars. And so these are all elements of the natural world. And inside of there, it talks about a time when the creator, he did a vision quest. And these are ceremonies that we do to this day. We've revitalized those ceremonies in our community. And the purpose of that vision quest is to get a glimpse of why are you here? Very basic question. Why are you here? And so in our customs, when a young woman comes to that age of when she changes physiologically from a girl to a young woman, and the same with the boy, when they change physiologically from a boy to a young man, these ceremonies were initiated. And it culminates with the vision quest. And in the story, it talks about that he went into this lodge, and he's in total darkness for 3 days and 3 nights. And on the 4th day, he emerged. And when he came out, he had an idea of what his gift was, and that was to create. And so that's what he began to do. And what he used was the earth. he took the earth and he made molds and shaped it in such a way of how he envisioned it to look. And he had to breathe into it. A part of his spirit went into that. Everything that he created, the plant world, the animal world, the bugs, and the birds as well. And in his mind, as he's doing this, he's thinking that this is what it's going to, this is the purpose it's going to serve, while it's here. And that from this time forth, it'll continue to be that way. And so inside of here, then they talk about that all of these different kinds of plants were created. And then all these different kinds of waters and life that live within the various types of waters, that they were all created. And then also all of the different kinds of animals, as well as bugs and birds. So all those things were created. And as he's going around doing that all over the world, what we call our Mother the Earth, he's given each and everything a purpose for being here. And so in his mind, as he's doing this, he has good intentions, he has good thoughts. But his brother, Sungwahlewata, is what means is he causes us to suffer. He kind of embodies that I guess the negativity of being a human being. This is where I don't care comes in, where inferiority comes in, where jealousy and envy come in, and that's the kind of a person that he was. He envied it in his brother. He was jealous of his brother because of the talent that he had. But you see, they're identical. They're not identical twins, but they have identical powers. And so as the creator was doing his thing, he would come along behind him and see what he's doing. And then he tried to create something in his mind that was going to be better, is going to outdo his brother, right? But he always had negative intentions, though. And some of those things he created was to do away with the things that the Sungwaya Adiza was creating. And so that's how it is. This world becomes this I don't know if we want to say positive and negative energies, but forces, but that's how this world came to be. And so he did that with everything, the plant world, the animal world, the water world, and the birds as well. And the very last thing that he created was us, the human beings. And so in there, as he went around our Mother the Earth, creating these different people, he gave them different sizes, different shapes, and different colors. And the unique thing that he did is that every group that he created, he gave them a language. And that language was the place of their origin. And at the beginning of time, that was the only place in the world where that language was spoken. So as we call ourselves Ludenoshoni in our language, we're the people of the Longhouse. And then the contemporary world comes to call us Iroquois. And so all of those nations that are Iroquoian, at one time, in our understanding, we were one people. But today, over time, there was dozens of different nations that branched off, and the languages changed a little bit, but we could understand one another. And in this part of the country here, this is traditionally the Algonquin and Siouan. The Ho-Chunk are from the Siouan nations, our language group, and the other nations here, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, the Menominee, Potawatomi, even the Stockbridge, who are originally from the East Coast, they're all Algonquin, and their languages are all very similar. The customs are very similar, the stories and everything. But ours is, again, totally different. Our language, I don't understand Menominee or Ho-Chunk or, any of those languages, and vice versa, they wouldn't understand mine, because we're two very, very diverse. And so that's the way the creator did it. He intentionally did it that way because that was his what do you call that, template that he started with everything here on the earth. was very, very diverse. And all of the animals are very, very unique and very special. And just as well as all the different birds and all the different plants and all the different water life and the life that would live within them are very, very unique and indigenous to just certain areas on our Mother the Earth. And that's what the Creator did with the people as well, made them very, very diverse. And the language is the evidence of that, and that nowhere else in the world was that language spoken than where those indigenous original people were created. And it's like that all over the world. And they say there was an order to who was created first. And in our stories, it talks about Ladihunji is what we call it. And what that means is like their hair is singed. And this is the black race. And they say that was the very first one, those people. And then it was the white people, the white race. And then it was the yellow people over in Asia. And then in this part of Turtle Island, North, South, and Central America, was the red people. And that's how he did it all over this part of Turtle Island as well as all over the world. He made each and every person, every ethnic people unique, and the customs that they have, the ceremonies that they do is unique to those people. The unique thing about all of this, though, is that all of that has to do with the same thing about being thankful. All the ceremonies that we do all over the world are about giving thanks back to the natural world. And so in our culture, all the ceremonies that we do throughout the year, it's about honoring, the natural world. And so there's a cycle of ceremonies that we have, where we, like we just finished our harvest ceremonies this past week, Tuesday. And it's all about giving thanks to the natural world, for the sustenance, because we are the most pitiful things in creation. And so the Creator, he gave us all these teachings about how we have to be mindful and respect the natural things of the world. And that he intended that there be a very intimate relationship to everything in creation. And it's no different than the intimate relationship that you have with your parents, your children, your grandparents, like that. And the natural world out there, that's our extended family. They're here for a reason, just like each and every one of us is here for a reason. And so every day, we're to give thanks. Every day, we're to be grateful. And every day, we're to strengthen that relationship to the natural world in whatever way that we can. And so, like when we go out to harvest anything in the natural world, we always use our native tobacco. You can't buy this in stores. We grow this ourselves. And it comes in, that plant already goes all the way back to the beginning of time. And it grew from the Sky Woman daughter's grave after she gave birth to those twins. And we're given instruction to how to use that tobacco, because that's our way of communicating to the natural world. It's our way of communicating to the Creator when we burn that. And we can use it as an offering, and we can talk to those birds before you harvest them, and give thanks to them. And so that's strengthening that relationship. That's also reciprocity, because we're just not taking, we're giving back as well. And in the plant world, if we're going to harvest like Gohan Douglas, that wild bergamot, you'll see a field of it growing. There'll be some of those plants that really stick out. And that's the one you go to, that's the one you talk to, and that's the one you put your tobacco down to. And you don't pick that one, but you pick what you need. So that's another big teaching right there with our people is, take what we need and to always share, and in doing so, the natural world will respond. And we kind of witnessed that out here at Trout Creek, over at Coyote Run and over at where the birds nest, of how when we started those projects, there were ceremonies that we did. There were tobacco burnings that we did. And in terms of acknowledging the things that may be there, the spirits that may be there, and not to be bothered by what we're doing. And this is what we're going to be doing. We want to bring back, the natural habitat, and nature did respond, and so a lot of things came back home, to nest, and which we haven't seen here in a long time. We've been here for 200 years now. This year was 200 years when our first group of Oneidas came here in 1822. So it's been 200 years. And so we have stories about what the land looked like back then, and there was a lot of marsh, a lot of swamplands, and a lot of forest, and a lot of animals and plants and stuff like that. It was utopic. You could drink from a spring. Today you can't, because of all the contaminations that have gone on. And so inside of that creation story, it talks about, the birds, that how they were created. And initially they didn't have a song, and that came to them later. And this is where the hermit thrush comes in, where he hits a ride on that eagle, and when they're instructed to fly as high as they could into the sky, when they couldn't go any higher on that descent back to earth, they were given their song because they didn't have a song initially. He gave songs to the people, but the creator initially didn't give songs to the birds. And so he sensed that, because early on, they say from time to time, he would come back and see how things were, and, tweak it, and make things more utopic. And so that hermit thrush was the one that cheated, and he hits the ride on that eagle. And when he couldn't go any higher, and the eagle started his descent back down to earth, that's when the hermit thrush took off and started flying and flew all the way to the creator's world. And so in there, when we talk about the sky world, there's a word that we describe it as, in our language, we say skanako. It's also used as a greeting, because I can remember my grandpa, my mom's dad, when I used to go visit him, without, every single time, that was the first thing that come out of his mouth when he'd see me come walking in. He said, "Oh, skanako." And what that means is that there's this great sereneness, this great pleasantness, this great calmness, this great peacefulness that encompasses your whole being. So when you think about that intellectually in your mind, there's not a whole lot of clutter going on up there. You've cleansed your mind, and that's one of the things that they talk about, as we go through life, is that we make things right all the time. We don't sleep on that. We don't hold that, against somebody. We're to cleanse ourselves and make things right every day. Because if we don't, that can cause, some psychological stuff, So intellectually, mentally, we're at peace there. And then we talk about the emotional part of our being as well, is that is also at peace. And so again, is that it's a daily thing to rid ourselves of any of that negativity that's going on, because it can impact us mentally as well. And so we always have to be mindful of how we take care of ourselves emotionally, and finding those support people, to help us with that. And also physically, physically we're good. And so when we think about that in today's society, it speaks to, well, what are we putting in our body? What are the things we're eating and drinking? Are we getting the adequate sleep? Are we getting adequate exercise? Those are all factors in how your body, reacts to anything, all the things that you put in there. And so, within our culture, we talk about indigenous diet. what were the foods that our ancestors, used to eat. We ate a lot of ducks. We ate a lot of geese, a lot of turkey, a lot of birds. We got a lot of sandhill cranes out here now. Never seen them growing up here in the res, but now we got thousands of them out here. And but because of state regulations and tribal regulations, we can't eat them. But that's on my bucket list to change that, so where we can start harvesting them. They call that the prime rib of the sky, something like that, that sandhill crane. So a lot of those birds, were used as foods. And even prior to the U.S. being United States, a lot of those politicians, I guess you could say, from back in the day, they met with our ancestors and they talked with us about how we govern ourselves, and they observed us, and they really admired, I guess, how close to the natural world that our people were, and that how we honored a lot of things in the natural world. And one of the birds that was really highly praised of our people was the turkey. And even George Washington, he wanted to have that as a national bird, and even though, the eagle is even a more respected bird, because we used it so much in our regalia as well, that that he wanted that as a national bird. But the eagle is the one that's the leader, and it's like that with everything in the natural world. For the trees, it's the maple. For the medicines, we have the tobacco, we have the wild strawberries. For the birds, it's the eagle. They were given a responsibility, and that one goes back to that story again, that why the eagle was given that responsibility as being the leader. And so we use that bird, the feathers from that bird, in our traditional headdress, the Oneidas. I should have brought my gostoi, our traditional headdress. So on our it's made out of black ash splints, the ring with the cross, like to give it the bow, the dome shape, and then we put the leather on that, and then tie feathers onto that. We strip those feathers right on each side of that quill, and those feathers will swirl like that, and we tie a couple of them together and sew it on our gostois. And then we have 3 big feathers that stand upright. Well, 2 upright and 1 that lays down in the back, those great big feathers. So there's 3 of them on there. And the different nations, like the Mohawks, they have 3 big eagle feathers too that stand upright. And the type of eagle that we use too is significant because it's the immature eagle. And in creation, whenever life occurs, what we believe is that whether it's an animal, a plant, bird, water life, human, is that when they're born, the Creator provides that spirit in order for life to occur. And so that spirit, this came from the spirit world. There's no negativity associated with that spirit. It's gonna go, And so that immature eagle was very innocent. And it's like that with everything in creation. And so that's the type of feathers that we would use traditionally on our gostois, the men. The women would use those plumes as well and decorate them and wear them in their hair, for ceremonies as well. And so our gostois were used ceremonially, or even when we had politically as well too, our chiefs. And we would use those immature feathers from an eagle. It could be the bald eagle or the golden eagle, because we had golden eagles in our territory as well back in New York. And what that's to remind us is that when we put our traditional headdresses on, is to have that same mindset as the immature eagle, to have that innocence, and to have that skana, to have that peace, within you. because that bird knows what the sky world is like, because they say his wings touch that world, and so that bird is very highly looked upon, and we use that one, the feathers from the immature eagle, in our regalia, in our fans as well. So all those birds, everyone has a unique song. Everyone has is unique in how it looks, the colors that they have, and it's like that all over the world, eh? And that's what the Creator did with the people as well. Now, there are some ceremonies that we have where some of those birds are talked about, or dances. One in particular is what they call the pigeon dance. Oli day is what we call the passenger pigeon, which was bountiful back around the turn of the century yet. And we have stories about that in some of our collections of stories that were collected back in 1939 from the elders back then. We remember back in the 1800s, the late 1800s, where they were still bountiful, and how they would go and hunt those. And some of the longhouses out east. So a longhouse was the traditional dwellings that we lived in. The doorways were west and east, and we're matrilineal, so all the women, from the line of one of the oldest females of the 9, remember there's 9, all would live in that longhouse, all their children. The husbands would go and live with them, and provide and protect. Today, this is like, we're all acculturated today. We all live in, 3-bedroom ranch homes and stuff like that. But the place where we have our ceremonies is what we call the longhouse, ganuses. Ganuses, it's a house that's long. And so inside of our longhouse, on the west end of the longhouse, it's where the Wolf Clan people sit, and visitors and people, that don't have the clans that we have. And then on the east side is the Bear and the Turtle Clan people sit. And so when we do our ceremonies, they work together, the two sides of the house, to do that ceremony, to do all the songs, the speeches, and so with the pigeon dance, that was actually a ceremonial song. Today it's more like a social dance song for a lot of longhouses, but originally it was a ceremonial song, and it tied it into the maple ceremony. So in the springtime, when the warm winds begin to circulate again, usually sometimes late March, late April, early March in this neck of the woods here, the warm winds will start circulating and the sap will start flowing in the maple trees. And so there's a ceremony that we do to honor that, because this is where we always got our sugar from. Historically, we got it from the maple tree. There's other trees out there too that have that you can harvest sugar from, but the sugar content isn't as high as the hard maple. And so at this ceremony that we would do, there was a tobacco burning that was done. Again, that tobacco, oyunkwa was what we call it in our language, the original tobacco, the real tobacco. And this, like I said before, you can't buy this in stores. But we grow this ourselves. And when we burn tobacco, it's our understanding that whoever we're talking to or about, they sense that. Spiritually, they draw near. And at all ceremonies, the first thing that we do is what we call the Ganehela Dunksla, the Thanksgiving address, where we acknowledge everything in creation. There's a guy that's asked to do that, to speak on behalf of all the people, to give thanks to everything in creation. There's about 20 parts to that, depending on the speaker. And then when we do tobacco burning, we'll collect tobacco from everybody. And the belief is that when we use that tobacco, you want to kind of put a little bit of energy into what you would want to ask or thank or say to the Creator. So at the maple ceremony, when they do the tobacco burning, they do a collection and get all tobacco from everybody. And then there's going to be somebody that's going to burn that tobacco on behalf of everybody. And in the tobacco burning, we're talking to the trees, and maple in particular is the leader, the maple tree, and thanking them, that they're continuing to carry on their responsibilities, and that we're going to be collecting that sap to make our sugar, to make candy, to make the syrup. But at the same time, we also have to be mindful that we're going into the homes of the natural world. There's other plant life that grows out there are starting to come back to life. There's different insects that are coming back to life. There's animals that live out there. There's birds that are coming back. And this is their home. And so we want to acknowledge them as well and let them know that what we're about to do is to come into their home. And so we want to come in there with a good mind, and remind our children not to go wandering off too far, because then, 9 times out of 10, they're going to get hurt, and to stay close to sugar camp. And so the tobacco burnings, we're explaining all of this and asking, for that permission to come out there and to harvest that sap, so that we can make our sugar and all these other sweet goodies, So we're talking to the natural world there. So see, there's that element of respect that's there again. And so after the tobacco burning, there's usually a feather dance, which is an honor song. And we use the turtle rattles for that, snapping turtle, a small one, maybe about 6 inches, 6 to 8 inches in diameter. And they make a rattle out of that. And they put stones in there, or beads, or seeds. And they hit that on a wooden bench, and they sing these songs. And that song is done to honor the maple tree that is still carrying on its responsibilities. And then the pigeon dance would be done. They tie that in because this is when they return. They come back because they migrate. And they come back too during that time of when the warm winds first start coming around. Just like the robin. They're one of the first birds to come back. Sometimes they don't even leave. They stick around all year round. And so the pigeon dance is to honor that bird as well, because like I said before, it was a great source of food. And so they do that. And this is like a partner dance, man and woman that dance together. It's kind of like a march that they do, and they dance around in a circle. And there's a whole bunch of songs to that. And there's the lead singer, and then there's all the other people that sing like a response back to each song. So that the pigeon dance, was originally a ceremonial song, and some of the longhouses out east still do that, like the Senecas and the Cayugas, I believe, as well. And then there's another ceremony, and this has to do with our medicine societies, and it's a mythical bird. Hog oaks is what we call it in the language. And this is what we believe is that there's different spirits that were here before the Sky Woman came. And most of those spirits were all male spirits. And over time, they presented themselves when there was a sickness. And even some of the animals presented themselves as well, like the buffalo, the otter, and this eagle is also one too. And they say that, like I said, we're the most incomplete, we're the most imperfect thing in creation, the people. And because we have these liabilities, these shortcomings, sometimes we need a little help, spiritual help. And so this is where dreams come in. Like if we keep our body clean, we don't contaminate with all these XYZs, that people do today, drugs and alcohol, is that when we have dreams, they're very significant to our people. We have people that can interpret those dreams. And in particular, if it's a recurrent dream, like you had the same exact dream over and over, at least 3 times. I've had dreams like that. I've had to go see these people because I didn't understand what it was. Here, come to find out, it was one of those medicines. They're trying to get my attention, but I didn't know that. That at that time I was culturally ignorant. But and so that's how these medicine societies come into being. And there's one in particular that we call the eagle dance, which is a dance. It's a ceremony. It's a medicine, and that spirit picked you because it's seen something that you needed to become more complete, as a person. And then we have other dances we call social dances. These ohunjakeka, we call it ganunyatsu, is that these are dances that come from the earth. And there's a lot of animals. There's raccoon dance, there's rabbit dance, there's alligator dance, there's fish dance, there's snake dance. But there's some that are birds as well. Robin is one. Giskogo, we call it Giskogo. That dance is what we call a social dance. So these are songs that we do just for enjoyment. Like you want to go listen to polka, you go to Pulaski, eh? You want to go listen to Maharachis, you go down to Mexico. It's like our songs. And a lot of these songs, there's a story of how they came to be, an origin. And there's also the duck dance too. That's one that the children really like because they got to dance backwards. And then there's a part in the song where they come running through, and then we try to catch them. But these social dances are for our enjoyment, and some have to do with characteristics of those birds. So the robin, there's a part in there where we stomp our feet, and then we turn outward and we turn inward. It's kind of like a line dance, and we go around in circles like that. And there's a number of verses to each song. And at the end of that song with the duck dance, there's a part in there where we stomp our feet. And the story has to do with how that bird looks for food. It hops around, and it's turning up leaves and looking under stuff like that. But when it finds a worm, a lot of times there's just a part of that worm is sticking out of the ground, eh? And so when they grab a hold of it, they'll stomp their feet to create a vibration to pull that worm out of the hole that it's residing in. So there are different social dance songs that have to do with the birds as well. Like today, the pigeon dance is also like a couch or a social dance song as well that we do today. What time we got here? Okay, we got about 10 minutes. Is that how much time we got?
Yeah, that sounds great, Randy. Thank you.
I think I'll shut her down there. And if there's any questions or answers, I'm always looking for answers.
Yay. I think everyone really enjoyed listening. I always learn something new from you, Randy. I especially appreciated that how your robin dance mimics, or not mimics, but it's like signifying what the robin is doing, the actual bird. I think that's super special. So people are welcome to unmute and ask questions, or you can ask one in the chat. Randy, I'm sure, is happy to answer any questions. And I can start. I was curious if you could tell us a little more about the headdresses that you wear that you mentioned with the eagle. Yeah. Oh, are you looking to see if you have it?
A picture here.
I was wondering if is that for men and women? Or do they look different?
It's just for the men. Yeah, it's shaped like a dome. Yeah. And They usually use deer hide, to wrap the frame, and then you would tie those feathers when you split them on each side of the quill, tie a little bundle, then you tie them onto that and create the, how you want it to look. Eh? A lot of people put other kind of bird feathers in there as well to give it more color. But the main thing is that the three big eagle feathers. So one will stand straight up and one off to the side. And then one lays down the back. And that's unique to the Oneida headdress. Like I said, Mohawks, they're Iroquois, they have three eagle's feathers standing up on top of the Gostoi. Onondaga, same, they have one, Cayugas, they have one that's laying kind of side, not straight up, but sideways a little bit, and it twirls. Senecas have one up and one laying down. Tuscaroras, they don't have any of the big feathers on theirs. So every one of those Iroquois nations, for the men, that was the traditional headdress that they would wear. And it was just the men that wear them. Another thing about the Gostoi, that our political and spiritual leaders would do, what we call chiefs today. In the language, we'd say Lodianisu. What that means is that the tracks that they lay down through the course of their life extends for a long ways. Traditionally, we didn't have elections. As close to elections that we're going to have is it's the women who decide who's going to be their political and spiritual leader, who's going to be their chief. So there were those nine families, 3 from the wolf, 3 from the turtle, 3 from the bear. And those positions were intended to be for life. There's checks and balances in there to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do, and if they didn't, well, then they get impeached. And it was the women. We're a matrilineal society. It was the women that monitored that, and they had that authority to do that. But they were given warnings, though. This is where strike 3 comes from, because the third time you're out. And then the women, they would wear those plumes, underneath the tail of the eagle. That's where the plumes are, and they're real fluffy, and we use them for ceremonies as well. What we call a condolence ceremony. This is when somebody dies, a family member dies, and there's a point where a time frame historically was 1 year, and today they call it the 10-day feast. It changed just over 200 years ago. It changed because of contemporary times. And but there was a ceremony that was done at that time to stand that family back up. And within that condolence, they talk about the eyes, the ears, and the throat, and that dust of death settles in all of that, and they can't hear, they can't see, they lose their appetite. And so there's a ceremony that we done, and the plume was used spiritually to cleanse that dust of death from their ears, so that they can hear once again, not only the words that are being shared, but to their spirit as well, which tells them all the time what they need to do, And then they use a white, and that plume was from an immature eagle. And then they use a white leather from an immature deer, like a fawn. And they use that to dust away the eyes, so that they can see all of creation and see again what their responsibilities are. And then there's a medicine that they make from the sweet flag, Oninoolu is what we call that. It's grated up and made into a tea. It's a root, and they give that to them to drink, and that's to cleanse their throat so that they can speak. Because during the time of grieving, it's really hard, and we lose our taste buds during that time. There's yellow bile that builds up in our stomach, and so that's to cleanse that away, to get our appetite back and get our taste buds back. And so that was to raise that family back up. So though that plume, we use it in that condolence ceremony as well. But the women, that's what they would use. They're really, the wind just makes them dance all the time, those plumes, from an immature eagle.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Randy. There's been a lot of chatter in the chat, which is great. So earlier during your stories, Greg gave us some more in-depth background about the passenger pigeon and significance to Iroquois people and elsewhere that perhaps you can read later. Really appreciate you sharing that information to us, Greg. Eliza says, Yawanko, Randy, and Howie says, hi, I believe. So hi, Howie and Eliza. Nice to see that you're here.
That's good.
Paige says, thank you so much, Randy, for sharing. I would love to learn more of names of the birds in the Oneida language if we have time.
Oh boy.
Which is really interesting. Maybe pick a few of the ones that you've shared with us today, like bald eagle, hermit thrush,
Yeah,
robin.
that sandhill crane, Degalu Yagane, Degalu Yaganle, the whole word. But see, we got a lazy tongue as Oneidas. When we say things in isolation, the N is usually whispered, and it kind of gets a little different too sometimes at the end, but usually that last syllable is whispered. So Degalu Yagane is the word that we have for the sandhill crane. And what that means is that he's like staring at the sky. And it has to do like with their dance when they have that mate, when they're mating. I've seen that. I've seen those guys dancing, they're picking things up and throw it in the air and dancing around like that. So that's the name of that guy. Gisgogo has to do with a fire. Go means it's a great one. So and there's the story, and there's why that bird has that brown chest, and it has to do with a time where the birds were deciding what to do when that first winter came, and Gisgogo wanted to stay. He didn't want to fly south, on vacation in the Bahamas. He wanted to stay in Oneida, and so they made a fire, and it got so cold though. He kept getting closer and closer to that fire. Is that it kind of it's more like a smoke hide, than what it looks like. His chest got smoked like a deer hide, a real dark brown, and so eventually, they ended up having to fly south, So Gisgogo has to do with that fire, and it's a great fire. This is where he got his chest not really burned, but it was more like smoke from the smoke, Like when you smoke a deer hide, you start that fire underneath. You create you tie it all together in a big cone, and you have your fire in the bottom, and you put your chips in there to create that smoke, those wet chips. And there's different kinds you can use, and that creates that smoke. The longer you smoke it, the darker that hide is going to get. So that Gisgogo, he was huddling up to that fire for a long time because his chest is really, really pretty. It would make a really pretty color, for like a deer hide. What else is there? Some of the words are their songs, like the crow is ga ga, ga ga, the gahunk is the goose, the Canadian goose. It's gahunk, gahunk, like that. Jikjalele, jikjalele is the chickadee. That's kind of like the song that it has, that is going around. Lau lau is the hummingbird, lau lau. And that has to do with its song. It has a really, really, really quiet little chirp. I heard that bird one time. I was down in Arizona. What the heck is that? And I heard that hummingbird had a nest up there. And we're at this botanical gardens down there. All these cactus were in bloom then, and they were nesting there. And here that was that lau lau, There's really, really soft song that it has. It almost sounds like, wait for me, wait for me. So a lot of the words of the birds, have to do with their song as well. And some have meanings, and it's usually a description of a characteristic of that bird. Like Galhaguha is the red-tailed hawk. And that one there, what that means is that its habitat is of the forest. So that's where you're going to find the red-tailed hawks. Galhagu. So that's just some of the words of some of the birds. We've lost some of the words, of some of those birds. But there's, people are digging around in archives looking, snooping around and some of that stuff, because a lot of that stuff was written down at one time, way back. Like George Washington he's got quite a collection of our language, that he had written down, all those first presidents, Benjamin Franklin, all those guys. And so we have people, one guy in particular who's been digging through all of that, and he's been finding a lot of words of animals, of plants, of birds, insects, that we lost, because of the acculturation, and so we're slowly getting some of that back. But our language is a very descriptive language. So what they used to do was create a word then. Like we got words for refrigerator, microwave, computer, a cup, things we never had. But because of our language, we're able to create words that describe, its purpose, And if need be, we could probably do that with some of these birds that we can't find the names for, and create a word.
That's so fascinating, Randy. Never occurred to me things like refrigerator. Of course, that wasn't around.
Right, microwave.
Yeah.
Automobile.
Few more comments. Samantha Dockstader, and I apologize if I'm
Sam.
hurting people's names. I'm not great at pronouncing them, but Samantha says Yawanko, Randy, for me, and Akotha B. Sorry, I'm butchering that word. We tuned in from Oneida, Ontario. And Akotha is always talking to the birds too.
Yeah.
I got a note from. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The other Oneida community out by London, Ontario. That's just north of Detroit in Ontario. There's another Oneida community that a faction moved out there, and then there's still some of our people still in their homelands in New York. So there's three communities. And the Thames, they call it the Oneida the Thames. They were more of the traditional people, where they continued to have the ceremonies, and the majority of Oneidas that came out here were all Christianized. There was a small faction that came out here that were considered pagan. Yeah. So Sam and Beatrice. Beatrice is a clan mother from out there in Ontario, Wolf Clan.
Very cool. A couple more comments. Alan Greenland, I really appreciate the honor and respect that is expressed to the natural world in your stories, whether it is the land or the creatures. I also feel close to the Creator when I go out in nature, and I thank Him for His creation. I find your stories fascinating, Randy, and I'm grateful for your time and willingness to share with us. Really nice. Sandy Gillum, who you've been emailing recently, says, thank you, Randy. I will always remember your description in the field of the name of sandhill crane that changes whether the crane is on the ground feeding or if it was in flight. That is such a colorful way to share a thought, an observation. Thank you, Sandy. Wendy Jones says, thank you for sharing your knowledge and connecting us with birds in the Oneida traditions. Sherry or Cherry, I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name, Elm. Yawanko, Randy, I so enjoy listening to your stories. Carrie Hagano says, thank you so much, Randy. Tashina Redhill says, Yawanko, Deangot. And then Emily Schwegel, our intern on the project in Wenzel, says, thank you so much for sharing, Randy. We got a really nice turnout, Randy. a lot of great people.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have those social dance songs recorded, and we were just giving them away before COVID, but I don't know where that is now because I've retired, semi-retired, so I'm not here all the time at work anymore. And I don't know what the status is on that. But yeah, we do have those songs, Earth Dance songs on CDs, or you can put them on their flash drive as well.
Oh, that's really neat. Very
Yeah.
cool.
I think if you bring in a flash drive, we can download that. Those social dance songs. There's about 24 of those songs.
Oh, that's so great. Really glad to hear that. In one more comment from Jillian. You might remember Jillian from our summer camp. She led the the bird transmitter exercise. That day we were at Duck Creek Quarry. She says, "Yay, Randy!" She really enjoyed it too. Yeah, I guess if we might have time for one more question, and if anyone has any. Oh, before I forget, I was gonna make a plug for listening to Randy more if you would like to hear from him. At UW Green Bay, there are elder hours that take place in Wood Hall, room 410. I'm going to drop this in the chat, so don't worry, on the Green Bay campus. And Randy is always present on Mondays this fall from 9:30 to 12:30. There are other elders that you'd be welcome to listen to. These are open to the public, so anyone is welcome. And then Randy also signed up, he's a busy guy, to tell Oneida stories in the Oneida Civic Center every other Thursday starting tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. So I'm going to drop that in the chat and then add the flyer about the Civic Center storytelling. Nobody can duck call like Randy. That's what Margaret King says. Yawango. That's hilarious. Oh my. Bobby Webster says, thank you so much for this, Randy and Aaron and Jessica Reynolds and Jennifer Damon have also, I think, said thank you, but I don't know the language that's there.
I won't go.
Not Yawango, it's and I don't know. I'll can you see the chat, Randy?
Okay,
I'll paste one of the words there. Oh, it's in Mohawk. Okay, thank you.
Oh,
does it mean thank you, Jennifer?
I can't see where.
There's a chat, like a comic bubble icon in the bottom left, or well, bottom middle. Oh, it means big thanks in Mohawk is the word. That is wonderful. And someone requested the duck call. You don't feel like you have to do that.
Oh, the chats.
Yeah, the chat. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the words, and then this is another word.
Go. They got a little bit different spelling than we do.
Okay. Means big thanks.
Yep. Go. They got that
Go.
At the end. We just say go.
Yawango.
Yeah. We would say go. A little more oomph.
That's awesome. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, so certainly applaud however you want. I know it sounds like everybody's given a lot of thanks, but this has just been wonderful. I've been looking forward to this for a while, Randy. So really, really appreciate your time and sharing all of your incredible knowledge with us. And there are more thank yous and applause coming through in the chat. Tashina says you're their favorite language teacher. And there's thumbs up and hearts and applause, and yeah. So yeah, come listen to Randy again. Obviously, this is just a fraction of what he knows, the teeny tiniest fraction. He knows so much, has so much to share. So join for Elder Hours if you are able in our local, or join at the Oneida Civic Center every other Thursday afternoon to listen to him again. So yeah, thank you. You are all free to go whenever you like.
Go, everybody. Nugi was quick. You.
Nugiwa.
You. Okay.
Nagiwa yawa.
You.
Awa. Oh.
You.
I'm so excited that so many of your friends came.
Oh, yeah, all the
And
way
members
from
of the
Canada.
community. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what I love about Zoom, is it allows people from everywhere to participate. We used to do these in person, but it's really nice
Oh,
to do it digitally.
yeah.